Overwatch has to be one of the most frustrating games you'll ever play. I think out of all the online shooters I've played, Overwatch has probably shortened my lifespan through just how much it has pissed me off in many occasions. From the mechanics that are intentionally designed to frustrate to the way the game can be balanced at times, making it unplayable. The game is honestly a good way to test your patience. Outside of the game, it also represents the lost potential it once had, and while things are looking up in its own less than favorable way, I do wonder sometimes why I even continue to play this game. It's not like I've sunk any significant amount of money on it, so I know I'm not held hostage by a sunk cost. And honestly, I don't care for the lore or the characters. Plenty of other games have their own diverse cast of lovable characters, and I would say that other games do it better. And by extension, I don't really give a crap about the quality of cosmetics. Most of the time I'll just run default because it doesn't matter to me. The crossovers are predatory FOMO, most things offered in events are fodder, and actual gameplay content is severely lacking in additions. Yet, why do I continue playing this game? Well, that's because Overwatch has what I believe are two of the most unique, interesting, and downright fun characters of all of gaming. Two that oppose each other as the symbol of their respective factions, where one fights for justice and the other fights for villainy. These two characters are Reinhardt and Doomfist. There is just something about these two heroes in this game that keeps me coming back. Is it their abilities, their personalities, or is it because of those astronomical highs? When the moment is just right that you can just... Yeah, let's get into it. Which is wild, isn't it? Two of my favorite characters in a first-person shooter don't use guns. Well, actually, Overwatch isn't a first-person shooter because not every character shoots and also has mobile. In the first-person shooter Overwatch, both of these characters fight with non-conventional weapons. Reinhardt fights with a hammer and Doomfist fights with his fists. Both can shoot projectiles but mainly deal damage through melee combat. But what makes them so great in the world with guns? Well, would you believe me when I say that Overwatch tries to make shooting with guns the least fun part of a first-person shooter? Oh sure, when the stars align, playing hit-scan heroes like Soldier, Sojourn, Ashe, Widow, Bastion, Cassidy can be a lot of fun. That is, if the enemy isn't running any of the rest of the cast and also eats crayons, as most other heroes prevent hit scans from playing the video game, such as with shields, consuming abilities, and good old dive. By design, most hit-scan heroes are designed to crumple to dive, a coordinated pressure to overwhelm the enemy with precise focus. Hitscan can probably pick each of them individually off, but is almost impossible to go directly up against multiple dive characters. Best they can do is run away, but hardly can they manage this weakness. The worst enemies to go against, especially when controlled by a competent player who understands the overall game, are D.Va, Genji, and Ana. Why? Because they have the ass-itching abilities that make you stop playing the video game. D.Va eats your bullets, Genji deflects them, and Ana sleeps you, then purples you, and then you explode and die. Going against a team that effectively nullifies hitscan at all times sometimes makes you wonder why they exist at all. Of course, I'm just kidding. Hitscan is actually pretty good in Overwatch, but you get what I mean. That's where Rein and Doom shine, as they have responses to some of the most annoying parts of Overwatch. Reinhardt's shield stops crowd control and damage from having their full effect, and Doomfist's movement, block, and punch offers ways to disrupt the wall of bullcrap one might face. For example, a D.Va's defense matrix can't eat through hammer swings and punches. Rein and Doom tell Genji,
"Parry this, you filthy casual!"
and Rein can bait out and block Ana's tools while Doom can dodge them quite effectively. After the dust settles and cooldowns are exchanged, Rein and Doom can capitalize on this ability to close in and just beat the ever-loving shit out of them. Which, can I mention how satisfying Rein and Doom are to play? Hammer swings, fire strikes, and charge kills are just heavy-hitting euphoria. Same with Doom's punch, hand cannon, and slam. these attacks just carry so much weight to them. They actually remind me a lot of fighting games, and they're heavyweight characters. They're not fast, and they tend not to be good at all, but damn, when their attacks land, they hit hard. Speaking of fighting games, Reinhardt and Doom have some pretty notable weaknesses that heavy fighting game characters share, and that's that they are usually very open to being punished. If you mess up a punch or a charge or just engage at the wrong time, you kind of just explode? Especially since Overwatch is a competitive game, the enemy won't be shy to exploit all of your weaknesses. And your weaknesses are huge. A Reinhardt without his shield and a Doom without his cooldowns are pretty much guaranteed dead. So managing those weaknesses is a huge part of their gameplay, which I enjoy very much. Which might seem boring to most, but the rush of seeing the perfect opportunity and capitalizing on it is unrivaled. It's like playing footsies, which is another fighting game paradigm. Footsies is where the opponent tries to deal as much damage as possible while taking the least amount of damage as possible, only committing when the opportunity is there. Sound familiar? In fact, my favorite example of footsies and managing weaknesses comes from the legendary FGC clip of old school veteran Alex Valle, who was playing Hugo in Street Fighter 4, considered one of the worst characters in that game, going up against Bonchan, who was playing Sagat. Long story short, Valle was playing the slowest and lowest ranked character in the game, going up against one of the best characters who was designed to be strong against Valle's pick. But Valle played it smart, avoiding the typical moves Hugo is known for, and not giving Bonchan any significant amount of advantage, playing footsies, baiting Sagat, spacing Sagat out, using Hugo's uninterruptible attacks to put immeasurable pressure on Bonchan. Bonchan was waiting for the signature Hugo grabs that never came, until they did.
Valle is the kind of guy that it doesn't really matter what your notes say. It doesn't matter what your notes say, James. It's Alex Valle.
Valle basically played mind games with him, waiting for the perfect moment to finally strike, until...
It's good because he still has meter. Oh, he faked it.
It was
he's
a
gonna
fake.
get the full
Oh,
bonus.
he's gonna air it out on him.
Oh.
He read that and he takes the meter as well,
Yeah,
Alex
he
Valle.
takes the
Give him
meter.
a hand. Give him another hand.
Oh! Alex Valle grabbing it with the Ultra 2.
Oh, my.
This is not going to be enough quite yet, but he's right there. What's the follow-up? And he just overheads him. Alex Valle sending Bonchan in the loser's bracket. Alex Valle.
God, just like that, Mr. Street Fighter shows he came here to play.
That epic feeling of turning crap into gold, it's a very common feeling in the FGC, and it's very present when playing Ryan and Doom, as at any moment, you know that if you start popping off, the counter swaps enter in. But before we get into that mess, let me be the first to say that the Ryan v Doom matchup is probably the most balanced and fun matchup in the game. Poetically, they are the immovable object versus the unstoppable force. Practically, their playstyles and abilities complement each other very well, because of just how many calls and responses they have to every single part of their kit. Doom's slam and hand cannon can be blocked by shield, Orion's fire strike can be dodged or blocked, and both of their charges cancel each other out with a stun, leaving both vulnerable, which only leans favorably depending on the situation. Their calls and responses don't directly nullify each other, as each response comes at a cost, such as a block or a dodge from a fire strike means using up a resource that could leave you vulnerable. A block with shield gets Ryan ever closer to running out of it, and a mutual stun can be seen as mutually assured destruction. In fact, sometimes it's just better to take the hit, as it can leave the opponent offside, now at the mercy of your own team, who won't have any trouble demolishing the lone tank. Which is an important distinction that I have failed to mention, that being that these tanks have to commit themselves when attacking due to their short-range attacks in order to interact, making positioning an additional cost. The direct interactions contrast other tank matchups where the responses have negligible cost. You can't viably punish a D.Va or a Winston who catches out a squishy, as a charge can be read and jumped away from, just as you can't punch or charge a fortified Orisa or a charging Malga. Junker Queen, Ramatra, Sigma, and Roadhog can inhibit you with a skilled cooldown, by just being in the range that extends far beyond themselves, which is necessary to be in when playing Rein or Doom. That's not to say that these matchups are unbalanced, but they don't feel as satisfying as Rein versus Doomfist, as closing the distance becomes exacerbated when going up against other tanks. This neat trait of Rein v Doomfist is what makes me like 5v5, and that's how personal a tank v tank interaction becomes. A part of the complaint about 5v5 is about how the game revolves too much around the tanks who are buffed to the point of being titans in a team of mortals, and even tank players don't like this, as people tend to over-focus on the tank. The game just ends up resting too hard on their shoulders, and everything just ends up getting stacked against them. But a positive of being the lone tip of the spear is the personal rivalry you share with your enemy tank. An appeal to fighting games is that you aren't just fighting the character on screen, but rather you're going up against the person holding the controller. The character is merely an extension of the player, and thus, even if you're going up against the same character, a different player changes them completely into a new entity. They can vary in aggression, mind games, and skill. With the multiple aspects of playing Rein and Doom that we talked about earlier, this experience transfers great into Overwatch's 5v5 format. Having fallbacks and backup plans with additional tanks in a match dilutes this experience, as the more team-focused aspect removes the one-to-one from fighting the enemy tank, which is completely fine for a game like Overwatch, which is all about team play, and I'm sure it will bring satisfaction to most with the return of 6v6. But I feel like there's a little bit of magic lost if 5v5 were to go. But hey, what are you gonna do? Tank matchups are the biggest point of contention and frustration with the community, so I guess it's time to move on. But tank matchups are honestly the least of your problems. Even when you're going up against a good matchup, or even a mirror, the mortals have so much more impact than most people think. DPS players can effectively take down your supports and leave you vulnerable, or they can just outright destroy you if you don't play your cards well. Support players can make it near impossible to engage, as they can revert any progress and damage you made at the sacrifice of your own positioning and health. There will be many times where you feel like you're powerless as Rein and Doom, because you have to sacrifice a lot to get a little bit of progress, and even then it could be all in vain. Dare you open your team chat, if you aren't completely rolling the enemy, you will be met with the most demotivating, vitriolic chat you will ever listen to. Keeping a positive mind can be near impossible and can even exhaust you, which can negatively impact your performance to the point that it feels like you're beating your head into a wall until eventually you crash. I can't keep doing this anymore. I'm frustrated. I'm upset. Maybe I should just play some other tank, like Orisa or Diva or Malga, but they're so fucking boring. Why do I even play Overwatch? These other heroes and these other players, it's all there. No, I just can't do it. I'm no good.
Then the time come for you to be your own man.
Who is that?
And take on the world, and you did. But somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you wanna be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you!
Hey, I didn't hear no bell.
Well, you can't win them all.